Call the city council meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Alderman Coles.
Here.
Alderman Police. Alderman Knight.
Here.
Alderman Cadella.
Here.
Alderman Shockey.
Here.
Alderman Winger.
Here.
Alderman Wesley.
Here.
Alderman Lewitton.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here. Quorum being present, will you stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 17th, 2008?
I have something I'd like to question about this.
So moved.
Well, let me get a motion on the table first. I have a motion.
moved.
Do you second, Alderman Lewitton?
No.
Second.
Alderman Lewitton.
On the minutes of the last meeting where it talks about the vote for approving my committee, I believe the vote of Winger is wrong. Ms. Winger, could you check it and tell me if that's correct, that it's wrong, or did you vote that way?
Correct. What item are we looking at on the minutes?
Economic development.
Economic development.
Did you abstain on that issue?
I recused myself.
So it should not be reflected in the affirmative. She voted aye. If you could make that correction. Any other comments or corrections? Alderman Winger?
I just wanted to thank you, Alderman Lewitton, for pointing that out. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Bills, Alderman Wesley?
Obtain motion, pay the bills, $327,655.80.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the question? Roll call.
Alderman Coles.
Yes.
Alderman Knight.
Yes.
Alderman Cadella.
Yes.
Alderman Shockey.
Yes.
Alderman Winger.
Yes.
Alderman Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman Lewitton.
Yes.
Those items are approved. Does any citizen wish to address the city council this evening? If so, if you go to the podium and give us your name and address, please. Hearing none, I do have a written communique from Maria Schweitzer, 465 West Dominion, Unit 301. Mr. Mayor, I'm writing to you today to inform you about a dangerous area for pedestrians in our community. It is a stretch of Addison Road from Dominion Drive to the north and I-290 to the south. There are no sidewalks on this section of the road and is heavily traveled by foot traffic, many of which I have witnessed walking right on Addison Road. I feel it is very important to address this situation, and maybe you can consider building a sidewalk to assure safety for the public use. Sincerely, Maria J. Schweitzer. Mr. Kramer or does anyone know, isn't this the county taking this on as a project and they're constructing that this year? Or Alderman Winger?
That's what I thought as well. I thought they were going to take that part on with a path, but maybe Mr. Kramer has more information.
Mr. Kramer?
At this time, I do not have any information, but I will look into it. I will talk to the city engineer.
Very good. In any event, that would not be our jurisdiction. That's the jurisdiction of the county, and we think that that project is going to go forward, but we will follow up and make sure that gets taken care of. I do have a second letter. Dear Mayor Johnson, this is from Save Abandoned Babies. SB 335, enacted last year, requires all Illinois safe havens to post a uniform sign on the exterior of their building to help identify the facility as a state-designated safe haven. I am pleased to present you with this certificate naming the city of Wooddale to be among the first 100 cities in Illinois to be in compliance with this recently mandated safe haven sign law. The safe haven law offers a desperate parent safe and legal option to unsafe infant abandonment. An unharmed newborn up to 7 days old can be relinquished to personnel at any fire station, police station, or hospital with no questions asked. To be identified as a city in compliance, your police, fire, and hospital, if applicable, must have all ordered signs. We are preparing a press release which will highlight reaching the 100 cities in compliance mark, enclosed as sample. I'll skip that. Thank you for your city's commitment to safe haven law and the infants of Illinois. Working together, we can make a difference. Sincerely, Penny Green, President of Save Abandoned Babies Foundation. And along with the letter came a certificate recognizing the city of Wooddale as one of the first 100 towns to be in compliance with the law on this subject. Under Mayor's report, on behalf of the city of Wooddale, the elected officials and the staff and the citizens, we extend our condolences to Alderman Police and his family on the death of his father-in-law. All of you should have gotten the email regarding the wake, which is scheduled for tomorrow. Again, our sympathies to Alderman Police and his family. Also under Mayor's report, I want to recognize the City Services Department, the Wooddale Fire Department, the Wooddale Police Department, the Wooddale Building Department regarding the incident, the storm that we had on Monday. Also Alderman Wesley and Alderman Police, who were busy on the street that night, also giving their assistance, talking to a resident. But most of all to the City Services Department, who kept our lift stations up and running, which is kind of an important function when the power was out, and also to the guys on the crew who cleared the streets and went above and beyond with the direction of our new city manager, and also helped people and assisted them with their front yards on removing the damage. Many of us have received numerous calls congratulating the city on its quick response. And would you please pass on both to yourself, who showed up that night, and that's greatly appreciated, and your staff for a job that was extremely well done. Anyone else wish to comment on that? Okay. It brings us to Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple informational items for the City Council. Status reports on a couple of the projects. The mayor and several members of the city staff met 2 weeks ago with representatives of IDOT to go over the status of the extension of the Elgin O'Hare to the western terminus of O'Hare Field. IDOT has narrowed its list of alternatives down to 7 at this stage of the game. Interestingly enough, the real changes to, or the differences between the 7 alternatives really have to do with the configuration of Route 83, north and south of Thorndale. All of the 7 alternatives treat Thorndale as it goes through Wooddale the same way. It's proposed to be a full-blown expressway with a guaranteed interchange at the corner of Thorndale and Wooddale. They expect to have those 7 alternatives narrowed down to about 3 by sometime early this winter. And at that stage of the game, move ahead and come down to a preferred alternative sometime in early 2009. So IDOT's in the process of getting that moving along. Also, last week, our staff met with representatives of the Lakota Group to begin the discussions that will lead to the submission of a contract with the Lakota Group and the city. They would like to get that initial contract to us by the middle of August, probably sometime late next week. They would like an expeditious review of that contract and a passage of the same, because their plans, if we can make this work, are to set up an initial public meeting to sort of frame the scope of the study, and they'd like to do that right after Labor Day. So if we can get that contract by about the middle of August, we'll pass it on to the city attorney, get it to the city council for approval, and hopefully get that kicked off by shortly after Labor Day. So that's a fairly aggressive time frame, but I think we can make that work. So that's also ongoing, and that's all I have. unless there are any questions.
Hearing none, that brings us to the consent agenda. Is there any objections to any items on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Alderman Lewitton?
An ordinance amending and restating ordinance authorizing entity into a recapture agreement between the City of Wooddale and Elmhurst Builders. I read this over, and anybody who comes along afterwards to hook up is going to be paying the equivalent of 13%.
At this time, Alderman, are you asking that it be removed from the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay, very good, that's done. Any other? May I have a motion to approve the agenda being items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now may I have a motion to approve the items on the agenda being an ordinance authorizing variation of lot coverage for construction of addition for property located at 398 Spruce, letter of credit reduction request to Sora Builders, letter of credit reduction request to C&J Subdivision, approval of Emerald Ash Borer Action Plan, approval of Clefstad Lift Station Rehab Change Order Number 1, approval to continue Wooddale Citizen Survey for 2008, and approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code of the City of Wooddale to revise monthly administrative charge for scavenger service for certain properties. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Alderman Cole.
Yes.
Alderman Knight.
Yes.
Alderman Cadella.
Yes.
Alderman Shockey.
Yes.
Alderman Winger.
Yes.
Alderman Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman Lewitton.
Yes.
Item 1 is approved as ordinance O-08-33. Item 8 is approved as ordinance O-08-34. And all the other items are approved as well. We'll pick up item 2 under other business. That brings us to committee chairman reports. Alderman Shockey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion to agree with the with the Planning, Zoning, and Building Committee to approve item 08-V4, an ordinance authorizing a variation to lot coverage for construction of an addition to a building located at 875 Lively Boulevard.
Is there a second
Second.
on the question? Roll call.
Alderman Cole.
Yes.
Alderman Knight.
Yes.
Alderman Cadella.
No.
Alderman Shockey.
No.
Alderman Winger.
No.
Alderman Wesley.
No.
Alderman Lewitton.
No.
All right, that item fails.
That's the end of my report.
That brings us to Public Health, Safety, and Judiciary. Alderman Coles.
No report, sir.
Brings us to Public Works. Alderman Winger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion, which I believe was in good part due to the hard work of Stormwater Committee, Dory Madonna Chairman, supporting her as well, Ronnie Shockey, and then city staff, Mr. Murmas. And I make a motion, a resolution authorizing the City of Wooddale to request a grant from DuPage County in the amount of $10,000 to ensure proper maintenance and offer additional recreational amenities at the Wooddale Itasca Reservoir.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the question? Roll call.
Alderman Cole.
Yes.
Alderman Knight.
Yes.
Alderman Cadella.
Yes.
Alderman Shockey.
Yes.
Alderman Winger.
Yes.
Alderman Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman Lewitton.
Yes.
That's approved as Resolution R-08-15.
That concludes my report.
Finance Administration, Alderman Wesley.
No report, Mayor.
Community and Economic Development, Alderman Lewitton.
No report, Your Honor.
That brings us back to item 2, an ordinance amending and restating ordinance number 00829, authorizing entry into a recapture agreement between the City of Wooddale and Elmhurst Builders and Developers, Inc. concerning construction of public improvements serving specific properties in the City of Wooddale. Is there such a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the question, Alderman Lewitton.
I just think, to me, 13% is usurious. The next buyer in on the project would have to pay quite a bit of money. If this were to go out 10 years without recapture, it would go from $500,000 to over $2 million. I think that, and I'm basing this on other arguments that I've seen up here. It wasn't 2 months ago, we were having a person annexing to this city, refusing to hook in because of the large amount of cost to come into the city for the water. I just think that this is due to the fact that it's going to be at some point where they're going to find other means to get city services that is going to be cheaper if this thing goes out 10 years into the future. So besides, I can't get 13% interest on my money in any bank that I know of or any stock market bond. I just think that it should be reduced to something that would be completely logical with today's financial markets and something that would not be onerous on the future buyer. I have no problem with them recapturing their principal. It's the amount of interest that they should get. I mean, we're lumping together the city's 3% with the builder's 10%. And this, like I said, if it goes out 10 years, takes this $500,000 to over $2.2 million. We don't know when somebody's going to come in, and we don't want to make it so such a hump for somebody to go over to come in, that I think that should be clearly brought down to a more reasonable interest level, and it should be defined whether it's cumulative interest or if it's only that rate per year non-compounded. I think that should be brought into it. I also feel that we have no proof, and no proof could ever be ascertained, that this company would be in business 10 years from today, so that there should be a clause that if at the time a recapture agreement is actually achieved and the business is defunct, that it should become the city's property and the city to decide whether to reduce it on the subsequent builder. And then the other thing that I would want in there is that it says that in Section 7 that they can sue the people to recover their money and their interest. But there's nothing in there that, if that is then the case, that is proper for a subrogation for the city's interest, whatever the city's interest may be. So I'm asking for three amendments. The first, I'll go backwards. Section 7, that if they do sue, that they subrogate for the rights of the city, which at this point, the way it's written, would be the 3%, which is in Section 6. The other thing is that there be a defunct clause put in there, that if the time of the recapture comes into being, that they no longer exist, that they've gone out of business, folded, retired, and put the business to sleep, that there be no recapture to a defunct entity. And the other thing, the third and the last one, is that the total interest rate be brought down to no more than what is the prevailing rates for interest as on a government bond. I said my piece. Who has a comment?
Fortunately or unfortunately, this has already been approved by the city council once before and is law with all those provisions in it. This comes back to us to correct a legal description error. But let me go, before I recognize Mr. Bond, Mr. Douthwaite had a comment.
Alderman Winger had a similar concern that she voiced to me today, and I went back and took a look at the history of some of our recapture agreements. This particular recapture ordinance calls for an interest rate on the principal of 10% and a service fee or administrative fee paid to the city of 3%. In 1989, we entered into a recapture agreement with the interest rate of 9% and the service fee of 6%, a total of 15%. In 1991, we had another recapture agreement, interest rate of 9% and a service fee of 6%, 15% total. And in 1994, there was an interest rate of 5% and no service fee. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the numbers in this particular ordinance are not terribly different from the recapture agreements the city has executed in the past. And as the mayor said, this was this was adopted in June, and the only reason it's back before you is that there was a mix-up in the legal description.
Mr. Bond?
Yeah, as both the mayor and the manager indicated, really, if you look at the title of the ordinance too, it's an ordinance amending and restating that. And the reason you have the full ordinance before you is so that at some point in time, 10 years down the road, somebody doesn't have to cherry pick and say, well, where does this come from? It's all in one place. So when they went in and did their engineering, there was some legal, they detected that there were some issues with the legal descriptions. Those are being corrected in connection with this item. I will address, though, the other issues. That I think the manager has addressed that, the interest rate. As far as the defunct clause, if there is no entity to collect, there is no recapture. We're collecting on behalf of the city. We're collecting that money for the benefit of that developer. That developer is fronting the money. They're subject to recapture. If nobody ever connects, if that property never connects, then there's no repayment for that. If there is no entity for that money to be collected from, then the city, there's nothing we're going to be doing for it. We're acting and collecting it, again, as part of this agreement on that behalf. So you don't really need a defunct clause. If that's not going to happen, if it's in a clause that's not going to come into effect, you don't need to reiterate it in here if there's no entity to collect it at that juncture.
As I understand it, you say we're on parallel paths because you're saying that if in the year 2011 that Elmhurst Builders has gone defunct and before that time, and in 2011 we get a recapture, that it becomes the city's money and the city does not pass it on to a defunct entity?
No. They're fronting the money, the way that it works, under the recapture agreement.
Right,
the
but this is a
developer.
corporate entity.
Correct. And if there is no provision for a successor corporation, there is no entity in existence to collect the money 10 years down the road unless there's been a succession of ownership. In other words, if the corporation ceases its total corporate existence, then there is no entity for which this money can be collected. And again, we're only collecting it on their behalf.
Would we collect it on
impose
their
a
behalf and hold it as city property then?
No, because it's not city property. It's property that belongs to the developer. There are funds that the developer is fronting for this construction.
So let me get the legal concept correct. If the entity for which the city is collecting the money is defunct, then the city would have no legal obligation or legal right to collect the money at all from anybody.
That's correct. We're collecting it on their behalf. They're fronting the money. We're collecting it on their behalf because we know when somebody would connect to those properties, when they would become part of the city.
Okay, what about the subrogation issue I brought up?
Well, the city has its own independent rights if they wish to pursue that against a particular property owner. There doesn't have to be a subrogation, the provisions set forth in the agreement itself. And frankly, I've never seen in a recapture agreement a subrogation provision on behalf of the service fee or collection fee.
Just trying to avoid the city having to pay an attorney when they have an attorney bringing the case already. A lot of cases are combined together and one party represents two or more parties. I mean, we've all seen cases where there's 1,000 plaintiffs, but in most common cases, like an insurance policy, the insurance company sues on behalf of themselves to recover from the car that caused the accident, and they subrogate on behalf of the insured for his deductible. So it's all they did is save the insured the cost of his legal expenses. In the same way, if they did it, it would save the cost of our legal expenses.
Well, I certainly think that's something we should look at for the future, but this was an agreement, and again, this was approved initially under ordinance 08029, so we can't renegotiate those. This is really just a housekeeping clarification, but I do think that you raise a good point and something we should consider for the future. Again, it's unusual in a recapture agreement, but it certainly makes sense.
Anything further? Alderman Shockey?
Yeah, I'd like to hopefully explain to the public exactly what's going on here. If I understand it correctly, Elmhurst Builders is putting in water and sewer pipes on these new roads that they're building, but they're only building the houses on one side of the street, and they do not have any control over what's on the other side of the street. And eventually, when somebody else builds on the other side, they'll have a recapture agreement that they'll have to pay to the contractor and to Wooddale to hook up to those sewer lines. Is
Mr.
that
Bond?
correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
They're fronting the money now so that this, it's not being done at the city expense. The developer, the builder, is fronting that money to have that work done in order to service. They're not doing it for altruistic. They're trying to service the properties that they're seeking to sell.
Okay.
And they don't have ownership or control over the properties across the street. So if and when those properties develop, those property owners will have the benefit of those improvements that have been made to the property, so they would pay their proportionate share for those improvements.
So, the reason I ask is sometimes we kind of start in the middle of things, and the public really doesn't understand what we're talking about. So I just want to make sure they did. Thank you.
Alderman Coles?
This is like on Tioga Street where Mr. Peterson put his in, and they had to tie into his, and we had to pay them a certain amount, and we collected from the houses that were that were annexed into Wooddale. Same thing as that, basically.
Anything further? Alderman Norton?
Alderman Coles, Peterson was the exact example that I was thinking of when I mentioned there had been an event here, because there's one person who has not hooked in that has, that if they did would owe Peterson money, and that's the one that's open, and then because of all the interest, they're objecting to pay that large sum of money because it's been like, what, 20 years that nobody's hooked in. And so the interest is a large amount of money. So you're right, Mr. Alderman Coles.
Roll call.
Alderman Coles?
Yes.
Alderman Knight?
Yes.
Alderman Cadella?
Yes.
Alderman Shockey?
Yes.
Alderman Winger?
Yes.
Alderman Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Lewitton?
Yes.
That's approved as ordinance O-08-36. We do need an executive session tonight on the subject of review of the official minutes and personnel pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C21 and 2C1. May I have a motion to adjourn the city council meeting into executive session?
So move.
Roll call.
Do we have a second? Alderman Cadella?
Yes.
Alderman Knight?
Yes.
Alderman Coles?
Yes.
Alderman Lewitton?
Yes.
Alderman Shockey?
Yes.
Alderman Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Winger?
Yes.
That passes.